Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for making the time to be with us here today. This session is about the feedback from the African IGF that took place from the 16th to the 18th of October in Johannesburg, South Africa. I think the IGF was a 3-day occasion. What happened was this was the first ever that happened during the IGF, that we had a high-level meeting before the main event where we had experts coming to talk about topical issues, issues that are of interest to us as Africans, and how can we take the internet innovation forward as Africans. And also, it was the first that we had more than 4 ministers present at the IGF. And for me, I think we need to build on the momentum, because for as long as we've had the African IGF, we've never had, senior officials or ministers in the meeting. It was the first time. So I think going back home, we need to, communicate to our government officials, communicate to our governments to say that this is an important issue and we need to participate actively, because whatever happens here is going to influence what happens in Africa. So it's a very important forum for us to be part of. And this, for us in Africa, this will actually, it completes the multi-stakeholder process or the multi-stakeholder approach, because most of the time governments are not part of the discussions that we're having. So it's like we're speaking alone, and yet the policymakers are not listening to what is being said. Oh, by the way, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Palisa Legoze from South Africa. I work for the Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services. Without further ado, I would, the first panelist is Adil Suleiman, who will give us an overview of the African IGF. He's the Senior Policy Officer at the AUC. Over to you.
Thank you, Palisa. I would like to highlight some of the achievements of this version of the IGF that took place in Durban, South Africa, as well as also talk about the challenges. One of the highlights, I think the rest of the speakers also are going to talk about some of these issues, but one of the highlights that we introduced the African Union Declaration on Internet Governance in the, actually in the previous IGF. And this is kind of an example that shows that multi-stakeholders model is working. And also the process, we are very proud of about the process through which the African Union Declaration on Internet Governance was kind of drafted and worked on. It's a bottom-up approach where the draft convention, the draft declaration was put online for everybody to can make comments, and then culminating with the call for the African Union ministers of ICT looking at the convention and also making contributions, and in Durban and making also some kind of proposal to put forward the convention to the head of state to adopt, to consider and adopt the convention. So we think this is kind of a multi-stakeholder in working. I have 5 minutes. I think just I need to go to the challenges. I think number one challenge is that everybody in the room and all the ICT experts believe that the ICT is the enabler for the Africa to leapfrog into the 21st century, and indeed also in achieving the SDGs. But not everyone is sold on that. Particularly the political leaders. There there is a lot of convincing that we need to do. So what we are facing with is the lack of the political will, the so-called political will, and somehow, for like the action taken by South Africa to invite ICT minister is a welcome, and this is kind of one way to mitigate that lack of political will, to include the policy makers in the discussion so that they're informed about the issues, and then they can also, we can get their buy-in into this notion that ICT should be the enabler for the Africa kind of to jump into the 21st century. This is, of course, we don't have all the answers. That's why we have this discussion. And I think my colleague Segun is going to speak to some of the answers in his presentation. The second challenge is to do with trust and confidence in the use of ICT. Throughout our discussion during the African IGF, almost all the speakers, they spoke about this, the effort to rebuild trust and confidence in the use of ICT and what needs to be done. It gets to a point where you think that maybe some of the important actors are telling us, fix it. We won't use it until you fix it. We want to see improvement. We want to get confidence back again into the ICT so that we can use it. So I think this is one of the main major challenges that we face. The last one, we are, when it comes to what we do, the work we do, I think we always aim at having an impact. And to do that, I think in the last IGF, we thought about kind of streamlining the recommendation so that the recommendation can be tracked and followed upon in the upcoming IGFs. And in that context, I think we are facing with kind of a question, we in the Secretariat. It's something to do with the multi-stakeholder group attending the meeting, whether they have the mandate to speak for this particular group. And of course, in terms, whatever recommendation or output that is coming, is it, in this context, is it viable recommendation outcome? And one answer to that question is that maybe when we have enough participation in all the groups, so then we don't have to worry about that aspect. But again, it's the issue of resource. And if you think about these three challenges, maybe if you solve one, then it's a domino effect, then the rest is going to be addressed. Like if you somehow, if the stakeholders, they have the confidence in the use of ICT, then they will invest in ICT, and then you will have more participation and so forth. So, but just this is to lay the ground for the discussion and the kind of challenges that we are facing in order for us to kind of have very concrete recommendations and output. And, I was told my time is up, and I think with that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adil. The next speaker is Dr. Mawaki Wachoko, who's going to give us the feedback on the African School of Internet Governance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm Mawaki Chongo, assistant professor at Kara University in Togo, and I'm also the founder of Digilexis Consulting in this field of internet policy and governance. So AfriSIG is one instance among those few region-focused capacity building programs around internet governance. There are a few of them. It started with Europe, I believe, and Latin America also has one. There's one in Asia, if I'm not mistaken, and AfriSIG is the African one. So this year was the 4th edition of this school. So it stands, as you know, as you have guessed, for African School of Internet Governance. It is convened by the Association for Progressive Communications, along with the NEPAD agency on behalf of the African Union. So I think it's been that way since the inception 4 years ago, and this year is the 4th edition, as I said. It's generally start with a call for applications, and we receive a lot of applications. And this year, actually, I'm very pleased to say that we had a good bunch of diverse profiles. You know, there's a mix of government people, civil society first and foremost, of course, government sometimes, lawyers, students, including PhD candidates, or soon to be maybe professor, faculty. We have also staff, sometimes staff from international cooperation agencies and so forth. So it's usually covered a lot of different profiles, cut across a lot of different profiles from different stakeholder groups, different institutional affiliations, and this year was really a good harvest, if I may say so, because after a thorough assessment of the applications, we choose depending on the resources, and I believe we had about 30-something people this year. Federico, if you know the figure, you can. We have more than 30 candidates selected. 45. Okay, good. Much more than that. And the process this year has kind of surprised me. I'm not going to talk about on behalf of other people, but I'm one of the faculty facilitator for the learning process, and I was very much surprised and positively so by the conglomerate of people we have this year, which gave a good, they built out of this a good, vibrant community that managed to carry forward the message and the takeaways and outcome of this program. And to date, they have formed various groups. One that I'm aware of, at least, is a WhatsApp group where they keep sharing information about internet governance and internet governance issues, and keep talking about what they have learned and the ramification, the implication in their respective regions and countries in their respective jobs. Now the link with the African internet governance comes through the practicum that we organize during the training process. We have that particularity. We give a lot of presentation, but also panels, discussion panels, a lot of interactivities, and including what we call practicum. The practicum is that they are given some theme or topic or issues to work on, and they form different stakeholder groups to interact and negotiate around those issues to come up with a common statement. And this year was really interesting because a lot of negotiation went on, and people really played very well their roles. You won't tell some people were activists, actually, civil society activists. They were playing government role and they play very well. Some other were playing business, etc. And they came up with a statement, a common statement on the issue. The issue this year was internet shutdown, okay? So the exercise was so interesting, so much so that the common statement was carried over to the African Internet Governance Forum. And they delivered that statement during the proceedings at the African IGF. One of the interesting aspects of organizing the AfriSIG and the IGF, African IGF together is this, the practical aspect of what the learners, the students have learned during the school can be implemented or can be carried over to the actual Internet Governance Forum, interacting with government notably, but also various stakeholders. So the AfriSIG class of 2016, they participated a lot in the IGF, the African IGF proceedings. Not only they delivered the statement, but also many of them volunteered to be rapporteurs, and they were involved in various debates, and they even organized their own sessions on different topics, and came at the closing session to deliver their outcome. So that's one of the very interesting aspects of this. We can come back to details in questions and answers.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mawaki. I will now hand over to Mr. Olibe to tell us about the key outcomes of the high-level meeting and the possible future engagement of stakeholders. He's a member of the Cybersecurity Council of Nigeria, the co-founder of the Nigerian IGF, and he's a member of the MEG. Mr. Olibe.
Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Moderator. I would like to respond to my colleague's requests on some information that he posted across to us. Then I want to respond to what you are requesting us to look into. But I want to emphasize one thing. Please, will you permit me to speak as African, a concerned African? Because I have observed that we have always been engaging in Internet Governance Forum over the long period of time. We've had enough of a talk show. We've had enough of engaging the community, the same community all over again. And we've also had enough of engaging in international programs or events like this. But I'm concerned about the fact that a question that we should ask ourselves, where are we really going? What is really the impact, the value are we trying to derive from all this participation and all this documentation and all that? Now, before I could provide a response to that, I want us to look at certain things. Now, I would like to emphasize that the current approach toward internet governance in Africa is extremely one-sided. It's not yet multi-stakeholder. Because when you talk about multi-stakeholder mechanism, then you have the equal representative of all the stakeholders group. When you look at the multi-stakeholder structure that we have now, you have government and probably some civil society and few, I've not really seen active participation of business and technical community, the youth, the student. Well, I really have to give it to them. The last African IGF, we can see the input of youth, and I can tell you that that's quite impressive. But taking it further, I really want us to look at how can we expand the frontier of internet governance in Africa. How can we break the wall? We have 3 products. The first product, we have the African Convention on Cybersecurity. We have the IGF Internet Governance Charter. Then we have the outcome of internet governance, which has always been on yearly basis. Then have we ever considered measuring the impact of this document? What have we been able to do? But let me streamline it to cybersecurity. I know I have a little time. You see, I tend to, it worries me that the African country seems to embrace more an international document. But when it comes to our own document, then you find ourselves asking question. Well, I really want, my intention is not really to blame ourselves, but what is the real thing that is making Africa not to embrace its own policy document? If it's an incentive, if it's a funding, then how can we address the issue of funding? How can we bring people that can galvanize the product that we have so that it can be the other stakeholder can accept it and run with it, and they can at the same time look at it in a manner that, okay, this is a document that has to do with our future. How can we drive it? How can we support it? Then on the internet governance, the way we are running internet governance in Africa, you'll find I really want to give kudos to the pioneers, the veterans that have been doing that. But I think there's a need for us to learn from what EuroSig is doing. Fine, it is essential for us to have African internet governance, African Union, playing a key role, maybe providing secretarial support and all that. But I think there's a need to have, the cooperation of all the stakeholders, most especially the business community. When I was discussing with one of the organizers here, I discovered that we were talking about the issues of funding. I said, if it's a funding, Africa has fund. I don't want us to always be coming to the international committee program like this and always be looking for funding. Let me use CAF, for example, the Confederation of African Football. There's only one company in Africa that has been funding it. I'm talking about Glo. Why? Because the impact and the goals of CAF is well communicated to the business society. And they are supporting it and they are funding it. So how can we communicate the outcome of internet governance process to the stakeholders, especially the business community, so that they can fund what we are doing, they can be engaged, then we can actually build the trust issues. There can be no trust if we refuse to provide an enabling environment that will bring all other parties into it.
Excuse me, time is up.
Let me stop here. By the time we ask you a question, I think I will. Thank you.
Thank you very much, even though you didn't give us the recommendations that we had requested you to give us. So the next person, not the recommendations, but the key highlights of the high-level meeting, because that's what we're expecting. But now I'll hand over to Mandia Ndiaye, who's going to talk on the recommendations of the IGF and whether they adequately address the issues of inclusiveness and digital transformation in Africa. He's a senior librarian. Over to you, Mandia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Mandia Ndiaye. I'm an academic librarian and an associate of IFLA International Leaders Program. IFLA is the International Federation of Library Association. I'm also the president of the Senegalese Library Association. I just was going to share about the recommendations that we had from the African IGF 2016 in Durban. For each session, we had the recommendation. For example, assessing the role of internet governance in the Sustainable Development Goals. All the stakeholders recommend that the government need to partner with libraries to deliver on national development plans. And also, government must embrace internet governance as a social development tool for community transformation. For the bridge Bridging the gender divide in digital transformation of Africa also, we issued 2 recommendations. Government support by civil society should launch campaigns and design programs to sensitize women on how to use the internet, including on issues related to women's rights. Government must also support, by private sector need to attract more women in developing technology and content. About Africa's digital economy and Africa and human rights on internet. It's recommended that the African Declaration on Internet Rights and Principles should be adopted and implemented by all stakeholders. The other thing is that the government also, media, private sector, and civil society should initiate educational programs at community level and in local languages that would raise awareness on the internet and promoting IGF forums. Connecting the next billion, which role for Africa? Here also, government and parliaments should establish a policy framework and strategy for promoting local content development and consumption. And also, regulatory bodies supported by the private sector must promote affordability of the internet to people in Africa. Third, local government need to create community networks where communities provide the internet access for and among themselves by connecting via network or Wi-Fi access point. About security and privacy issues in the internet, it was recommended that African member states should sign and ratify the AU Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection. And also, all stakeholders should promote measures on rebuilding trust and confidence in the cyberspace, and also reinforce capacity building on internet governance issues. Inclusive development in digital transformation in Africa. Here also, we found that African governments should establish clear goals specifying what was needed to achieve the digital agenda. Governments, private sector, and regulators should encourage organizations and government agencies to migrate from IPv4 to IP6 and host local IXP and content to reduce the cost of access to the internet. About the youth entrepreneurship and innovation, accelerating also the digital transformation in Africa, government should involve young people when creating policy for the youth and children. Government need to integrate innovation and entrepreneurship in the education system and support hubs teaching young people innovation. Member states should implement the African Union Pan-African Radio and Television Project, taking into account the need of the youth. And about reviewing also an approval of the African IGF Charter and reports on regional IG conference. The draft charter must be made available online to receive input from all stakeholders. For the statute of the recommendation of the IGF 2015, government should respect multi-stakeholders approach in implementing national IGF. IGF should be organized according to the bottom-up approach, so as the discussion had at national and regional continental levels are up to date. Recommendation of the various IGF should be taken into consideration in government, sub-regional and regional organization futures action and plans. That were the issues that you wanted to share about recommendation, Madam Chair. Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. The next speaker is Ms. Mary Oduma. She's going to speak on building on the outcomes of Durban and paving the way forward for inclusive development and digital transformation for Africa. Ms. Mary Oduma is the coordinator of the Nigerian IGF and the West African IGF. Over to you, Mary.
Thank you, Palisa. I am Madam Chairperson. Before I go on, I want to correct the name of Shegun, my colleague from Nigeria. He's not Olivier. His name is Shegun Olugbile. So please get that one correct. Now, we're going to look at the way forward. Some of us were there, others were not there when we came up with resolutions and recommendations. Okay, there are some that are low-hanging fruits that we can actually get hold of and implement. And how can we implement some of the recommendations? We need the buy-in of all the stakeholders. First, we need that our governments, our countries, our states, whenever AU has a meeting with them, should be able to present these recommendations somehow to them, for them to also realize. Some of them don't even know what's going on in the internet governance space. I was so glad that the South African government came in full force to the African IGF in Durban. So it's a good development. And we want others, whether the AU is going to use that as blackmail or what, to tell other heads of state that, look, this thing is there, we have to do it. South Africa is on board, so all of us, to know the multi-stakeholder, the implication of the multi-stakeholder approach of internet governance. So the buy-in is very, very key to us, amongst all other things. We also want to look at low-hanging projects we can kick off with. The business sector, for instance, how can they key into these recommendations? What and what should business sector take over? We are talking about digital literacy, we are talking about bridging the digital divide, we are talking about economic and social investment. They also need to know that there's a business case for them in the internet governance. Just like Shegu said, we have not had much of them in this space. And it's only when they understand. So when there's business activity, business sector program in the continent, can we take these recommendations to them? Can we take internet governance aspect, some aspect of internet governance recommendation to such programs? When many things happen, many programs happen in Johannesburg, in South Africa, in Kenya, in Nigeria. So when we have such program that is focused on business sector in our economy, can we bring the fact that there's business in internet governance so that they can see the business in it, the business value in it, and then key into it? We need that. We need to do that. We have educational program. We said government should collaborate with libraries. I think Library Association is a strong one in Africa. I think these recommendations, the Library Association should take it up as well and make it known in their own programs as well. We need to track these recommendations. Are we actually, when we come to internet governance, African internet governance next year, we need to know, have a measurement and see whether we have made progress at all or we are still where we are. We also, I think the collaboration and partnership issues, partnering with our traditional funders and our new funders that we can find in the government. The collaboration is very, very key and important. So we should not just be talking, but we get it done. Our teachers don't even know, are not digitally skilled. How can we take advantage of our recommendation and get to our school, teach our teachers to teach our students, and they too would also be able to benefit from from what internet presents. And we have the academia in Africa. I'm not sure they are playing their roles, or they are playing the type of role we expect from them. How can we take this message to the academic institution? Our universities should go into research. There should be research. They will come up with one thing or the other. I was listening to community communication, connectivity, just a few hours ago. And some of the new programs, or some of the new strategies, or some of the new mechanisms, even the Europe is doing, has now to be able to connect their communities. Can our universities, those of you in the academia, universities, we want to challenge you people to go into research and get money for your efforts. Maybe I'll stop there. My time is up, right? So that we could also discuss more on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Just one thing that I wanted to add. When I started speaking, I said that, I think the process, the IGF, the African IGF in Durban, it was the beginning of a process of engaging governments and making sure that governments are there. Because, it doesn't help coming up with recommendations when they cannot be adopted at national level. So even though we can say that we want to monitor the implementation, but if we don't bring our governments on board, then we will not move. So I think the important thing is to try and sell this as hard as possible when you go back home. And also the other thing that I want to say is that, I know that, when we do the National Internet Governance Forum and then we do the African one and then there's a global one, but my take is that for Africa, we need to focus more on our problems and challenges so that we can find solutions, African solutions to our problems, because we cannot say like we are like everybody else. We're a unique continent, so we should always take that into account when we discuss and when we have dialogues, that we need to come up with our own solutions and not try and adopt what's happening elsewhere when it doesn't really assist us in any way. I will open up for questions now.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I think there's a point I missed. One point I missed is that we have the national IGF, we have the regional, and then we have the African IGF. And I think we should try as much as possible to link the three, so that at the African level, then we are talking about some of the issues that are the bottom-up thing would have come from the national to the regional, then to the African level. That's the only other thing I left out. Thank you.
Mokhtar, you have the floor.
Thank you. My name is Mokhtar. I am the head of Information Society within the African Union Commission. And with my colleague, we are actually supporting the Secretariat of the African Internet Governance Forum. I have 3 to 4 key messages I wanted to convey. Number one is to complete what Adil was saying with regard to our challenges. He did not mention the financial challenges we do have as a secretariat in terms of securing the required amount of money that will allow us to keep on organizing the forum. Specifically, this coming year will be actually a big challenge. We hope we will make something, but it is also very important that from the participant point of view, to make sure that you are also somehow contributing, at least by sponsoring yourself to participate. I know it wasn't a tradition for the last 4 years. We have actually all the time made it happen in terms of bringing most of you to participate on that, but the challenges with budget sometimes can happen, but we need to be ready for such kind of situation. I hope we will be finding a solution, but in case of, we just be prepared. Number two is about issues raised by my brother from Nigeria. He actually said it right in terms of the issue specifically related to cybersecurity, EU Convention on Cybersecurity. People have the tendency to start to try to confront Budapest Convention with Malabo Convention, which is actually a useless game. It has no sense at all. One of them is addressing the cybercrime at the international level and cooperation. The other one is actually addressing specific matters with regard to personal data protection in Africa, electronic transaction, and partly on cybercrime. So I don't know why people are to put them in competition. Senegal, as an example, has signed both and ratified both. So why are we having a problem? And in any case, if there is any issue of ratification of that convention, you can always ask why and questions, and then we'll be able to assist. But from the government point of view, we haven't seen any problem that happening. This is where it is very, I have a concern. In one hand, you have the technical people asking questions, while in fact they are not pushing any agenda within the national platform to make this happen or not happen. And in the same time, you have the government who actually not asking any questions, but in the same time is not moving forward. So what happened is we are not moving at all. And this is why I am coming to the recommendation, which is my message number 3, is most of the time we do recommendations, very good recommendations, brilliant recommendations, but there is no follow-up. We, from the African Union point of view, we convey the outcomes to the organs, to the governments, through appropriate channels. But it is expected that those who were participating will go at the national, regional level and start pushing them. Unless we define another mechanism through which we are pushing this. And that we need to discuss it at the forum over there. And my message number 4 is the question he came up with regard to what kind of setup we do have, why the business is not participating, why the private sector is not participating. Now, we as a secretariat are, as I was saying in the beginning, we are pushing those who, quote unquote, cannot sponsor themselves to come. And we, most of the time, thinking...
I'm going to have to ask you to stop.
Yes, just the last one. One is we are trying to push for civil society, academia, to come. But we expect that the government representative and the business will come. The business never show up. Why? That's another question we have to address, and that will be at the forum also to discuss that. I had a lot of things to say, but
we are almost out of time. Any more questions?
So, my name is Moses Karanja. I'm a Kenyan citizen on this occasion. And I just wanted to raise the issue of the African internet shutdowns that we have seen and the unfortunate eventuality of not having even an official statement from the African Union, especially even to the government where you operate from, which is Ethiopia. And as much as we really would want to say, okay, yeah, these are governments, and as such, African Union is just another group of African governments. I think the African Union has been moving very fast towards incorporating non-government, members into the community. So when we don't see African Union actively pushing against some of these extreme forms, then we feel like maybe African Union is just, you're not actively participating in the principles that you are advocating. Even in the African Union Cybersecurity Convention, at no point whatsoever can a government justify complete shutdown of internet, whether there is a state of emergency or whatever. And as such, this is just my point, that as an African citizen, I feel like the African Union is not doing enough to push back against this detrimental push from governments around internet shutdowns and censorship? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take another question.
Yeah, this is not a question. I just want to make a statement on some of the comments that have been made here. I do believe that I'm Federico Links from representing the Action Coalition and Insight Namibia, which is 2 organizations in Namibia. And I'd just like to state up front that I'm fairly new to the IG space. But one of the things, or a few of the things that I've sort of noticed, and I feel that we really need to talk about is the logistical elements, which is some of the things raised here that, and how, if we want this to work, it has to be a two-way process from the national level, us as participants in this space, and from the AU level. For instance, I mean, AU level can help us open doors within our governments. And speaking from the Namibian context, our government is well, to be kind, clueless in this space. And so are we. But they're looking to us to help them understand what's happening and to facilitate. Actually, we're serving now on the working committee for our local IGF, which we hope to have next September. And one of the issues is that our government and regulators and the people tasked with getting this off the ground from the government side are fairly clueless. And so we need some sort of mechanism to help us open doors. And I think that will also help us with, for instance, going to business at the local level. If the AU office, for instance, can give us an official endorsement, help us in that sense, just to, because, you know, I mean, we operate in an environment where people like official accreditation. So we need that sort of assistance. And once we have that assistance, perhaps, I mean, we need to be creative about funding our African IGF. Perhaps using that sort of accreditation, we can then inspire our local IT sectors and ICT players to help us capacitate upwards towards the African IGF level, helping us fund certain activities and things like these. So it should actually, because of the constraints that we operate in, we should actually be looking at very creative measures to help us fund. But that would require of the AU office, and I'm saying this in very friendly terms, because I don't get the sense that there is a lot of outreach going on. So that would require a lot more proactivity from the AU office towards the national level and the sub-regional level. So, and that also, I think, an aspect that feeds into that is the issue of research. You spoke on a panel yesterday about data and the credibility of data within our context. Capacitating ourselves or helping us. Yes, I'll finish this point. Helping African organizations, research organizations and researchers to actually be doing IG-related research, country-specific, region-specific, so that we don't get to these platforms and have to rely on data and research from somewhere else and aggregate it to reflect us as part of a bigger picture.
Thank you, Frederick. Tijani, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Tijani speaking. It's a question to Mukhtar. You mentioned the problem of the African IGF funding. Can you please explain why this problem is now happening? Because I remember the 3 first IGFs, there was no problem of funding at all. So are there some sponsors that refuse now to pay, or is there any reason for that? Thank you.
Imla.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Emila Gandhi. I just want to make 2 points. on internet governance. I think in Africa, what we need to do is not to copy and paste the global internet governance agenda, but I think some of the problems that we are facing in Africa is because we're trying to be the UK, we're trying to be the US, God forbid, but we have to localize the internet governance agenda to suit the needs of, of Africa. And I think the other challenge that we also face, I mean, as Africans, we actually had problems coming to Mexico. Visas are an issue. Just saying I'm going to Mexico for a visa, coming from South Africa is just a problem. It's like you want to traffic something. So I think it's the practical things, the visas, they are so expensive. Just getting a US visa is, I think, more than $500 for most people, for most Africans. So there are practical issues, I think, that we can also look at.
Thank you, Imla.
Oh, no, okay. Good afternoon, I'm Natasha. I'm also from Namibia, and I want to emphasize that this is Namibian civil society's first attendance of the global IGF. And I don't really want to comment much on what was said by the speakers, but I want to share my experience as an African here, what I've seen since I arrived here on Saturday. We've had pre-meetings before the conference started. So I was aware, Namibia is very new in the IG space. It was both government and civil society that made a conscious decision this year that we want to get involved actively in the IG space. So we have, as government, Namibian government, and as Namibian civil society, we have begun to engage. Frederico went to AfriSig and Africa IG meetings in Durban a couple of months ago. We started talking to our government. So Namibia, we're really interested in IG now. But Namibia is a leading country in freedom of expression and all of that, so we don't have a problem with internet access. Well, we do, but we don't really have freedom of expression challenges in Namibia. And if you have the internet shutdowns and things like that are not a reality. We are pretty free quite free environment, one of the freest in the world, actually. But I wanted to say that even though I was aware of the fact that AfriSig and Africa IG, there were some issues, which is understandable. We have challenges everywhere. And I understood before, talking to people that have been working, other Africans that have been working in the space before, I was aware of the fact that the African voice at the space is basically unheard. Very little, we don't really make impact, we just here, window chasing, walking around, and that we're not really heard. And being here the past 4 days has kind of confirmed that for me, and I've been embarrassed to go to panel discussions and to various spaces and seeing, number one, how the narrative around Africa, every time speakers want to make an example of things that should not happen, Africa is used. We as Africans are not on panels, and if we are there on panels, then we are there as the victim that was saved by the West. And I just wanted to say that even this is embarrassing. I mean, I've seen a number of Africans walking around for the past couple of days. Where are they? So I want to challenge the AU, I want to challenge the civil society activists that are here, that we need to change the narrative and our presence around IG issues in this space. We need to do better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Point taken. You know, we've run out of time. Oh.
I believe you will give us some time
can I ask, can you give us 10 more minutes? Okay. Morta, I'll give you 2 minutes to respond.
Five important questions that, and I'll try to be very quick without developing. Number one, Tijan, the sponsorship is coming from the AU budget and some sponsorship that is coming. Most of the sponsors are used to give, some of us used to give 20,000 are giving you 1,000. That's one thing. And the AU budget actually has been cut by, that's why the reason it's not happening. On the outreach, we have endorsed the regional internet governance forums through the regional economic communities to make sure that they are the one driving the national IGFs. So are the one who are actually being empowered to do this kind of thing. However, we provide the endorsement letters for any regional IGF that will happen. We sponsor it, and we push for it, and we come to support it, technically with funds and everything. But I will explain that later. Emma, I definitively agree with you that we need to have our own definition on what is multi-stakeholder. We cannot copy the multi-stakeholder as defined today, because those are defined are giving to the governments less power because they are advanced kind of in this matter. We in Africa, for instance, the government is the job creator. The main, he funds the academia, he funds the civil society, he does everything, and yet, if you go to the definition of the multi-stakeholder, he should not play an important role. And then South Africa and the African Union do have a position on that. We try to develop that. What you said, I'm speaking quickly, but but I should have shut down. By the way, you don't have to feel bad about it. Africa is not the only country where you have the shutdowns. There is 2.4 million lost last year because of the shutdown in Middle East, in Asia, in Eastern Europe, everywhere. Africa is the only one. We are very sorry. Yes. No, that's be it. We don't have to be worried about that. African Union Commission is very sorry about that. And we try maximum to talk to those countries. But again, the Commission itself is composed of the member states, and they are the one saying yes or no.
Mohta, I'm going to have to stop you because other people I need the panelists to wrap up.
I would have just tell you the entire story about shutting down. It's not because they wanted to shut down. It's because they have a security concern most of the time coming from outside.
Mohta, can we not have a dialogue?
I choose to disagree, but we can have this
sorry, can we not
later,
have a dialogue? I will give an opportunity to the panelists to wrap up. I'll start with you, Adil.
I just wanted to conclude by circling back to my initial concern with regard to the lack of political will. I think if we have political wills, then most of the issues are going to be taken up by the stakeholders that are concerned, whether it be government or private sectors. And to answer the question with regard to the organizing of IGF at the local and regional level, I think Mokhtar addressed part of it, but I think people need to think about the sustainability. I think South Africa is a very good example where PPP was in full, in action, and most of the cost was borne by the private sector, and people need to take note of that. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. 2 points. Government participation. This is crucial. I'm one of the people who have been complaining about we having a multi-stakeholder process, but without government. So as long as you don't have government around the table, you're not going to have political will. So far, I think the AU participation, although AU is the Pan-African Intergovernmental Organization, is just a programmatic agenda. It's not a political agenda. So you need government to be involved to have a political agenda. The political will be behind it. So I was happy to see the involvement of South Africa last time around. Our process is like we talk about bottom-up process, but our process is kind of also top-down in a sense of it goes from international to local. So we need to, although it's not a bad thing, good ideas may come from international, but now we need to localize them. On research. Research takes time and money and resources. And I just want to draw your attention on the fact that the Western world has never made any significant progress without research. But in Africa, we don't give a damn about research. That's the problem. We need to. Africa is huge, but in many places in Africa, I'm a researcher. I know the struggle I've been.
Can you
Okay,
please
no
hold?
generalize. No general.
Can we have
well,
order, please?
I've been called by a Nigerian. I've been called by a citizen of Nigeria saying African research is lacking, and I've heard that a lot of times. For so many countries, research is an issue. Research is the abandoned child of all this. We need to do research in order to make progress. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll hand over to you, Mr. Olibilwe. Ne? I hope I pronounced it. No, I didn't say Olivier, I said Olibile.
Olusegun Olugbile. If you remember Olusegun Obasanjo, that it should be easy for us to be able to pronounce my name. Okay, you want to correct an impression from my colleagues.
Excuse me, you have 1 minute.
Yeah. Number one, I would disagree with you that Africa has not been having an impact at the global level. Let me communicate this clearly. The current IGF overhacking team, after so much debate and all that, with the African representative within the MAG, we came together and formulated that. And we won. So, but what we have not done is to take advantage of what we have done, to take advantage of that. We have not seen the African country coming forward because the inclusiveness we are talking about is actually Africa that we had in mind. That's number one. Number two, you cannot recreate a multi-stakeholders model. It is there. What we have not done is to implement that principle. And number three, I want us to learn from Nigeria Internet Governance Forum. You see, what we have done, we opened up multi-stakeholders model. We bring in security, law enforcement, lawmaker, everybody, and we communicate, the values of NIGL. And that has been the secret of our sustainability for the past 5 years. The last one, which I want to emphasize, the business community. You see, if you don't repackage IGL, Africa IGL, you are not going to get the attention of the business community. So we need to repackage it, bring a business guy, not necessarily to commercial that process, but you have to recreate the value. Business want to listen to value. I can't sit there. I'm a CEO of a corporation. You want me to sit with you for a whole day, and there's not going to be a tangible value I will go back with. We need to address that. And the last one, I think we should also look at how to review the regional approach to African IGF process. We have enough of recommendations. Let's move from recommendations to action. Thank you.
Badiai?
It will be just one word for enabling inclusive and sustainable development. It is just an invite to all the stakeholders to partner with libraries and librarians. Libraries as safe and open space without restriction for all. And librarians are trained people ready to help and to bring online. Please, partner with library and librarians for enabling sustainable development. Thanks.
Thank you. Mary, you have the last word. Mary, you have the last word.
Last word is that we should walk our talk.
Thank you very much, and I would like to acknowledge our rapporteur over there, Kolima Jama from Zimbabwe. Thank you for all the hard work that you're doing, and also to say that, we need to, I think, the discussions here were really robust. I think we need to have more discussions like this. We don't need to go into a platform and not say anything, because this is the future, and we have to really address the critical issues facing Africa. So I wish to see more of this type of engagement in the future. And thank you very much for everybody who came and joined us for this session. Thank you.